Our story today begins with a keyboard and strange sounds that prevent the main character from playing Dota in peace. At one point, he simply can't stand it and breaks his keyboard. How long can these neighbors upstairs play golf? He simply could no longer tolerate these terrible sounds, by the way. Meet the main character named Kang Yu, a short story writer and student. He already knows everything about the game of golf that his neighbors play, but they don't let him concentrate so easily. And what's even worse is that he did not agree with the fact that his father remarried. Getting ready for university, he already wanted to quit everything, but there was a reason to stay. Only his stepmother, whose name is Young Jimin, stopped him from giving up everything. She wanted to help the boy a little and take him to school, but he, like a true Sigma, refused such an offer. He wondered where his father was now, but it turns out that he was still sleeping. While the main character was tying his shoelaces, the stepmother asked if they were too noisy yesterday when they played golf, and the boy acted as if he didn't understand anything. What she was even talking about, did they play something yesterday? Well, if that's the case, let the boy just forget about what she told him. In parting, she asked him to be careful and left. And now our main character was already in his classes and thought that he urgently needed to continue writing a novel. It seemed to him that he just needed to not stand out from the crowd in order to calmly go about his business. Some lady appears at the door and asks everyone for attention. Seo-eun's assistant, who wanted to find someone to help her. There was absolutely nothing complicated, just a few things needed to be moved. Of course, no one wants to do this work and just started hiding like rats, only our boy stood like a pillar. She just walked up to him and began stroking his head, saying that he would definitely agree to help her, and the main character realized what a shitty situation he was in. It seems that she said that the boxes would not be heavy, but she simply lied because the boy was somehow carrying them. It seemed strange to him that a girl like her was the professor's assistant. She was simply angelic in appearance and somehow did not fit such a role, but the heavy boxes made him forget about his thoughts. Suddenly, the lady simply quickens her pace and says that she will go forward because she needs to help the professor. He didn't like it because he was already busy with his own important affairs, but he is now much more surprised by the fact that the professor's office was located here. But this cute lady with glasses is a professor at their university named Hwangbo Yorim. He stands like a grain of sand in the desert and waits for the wind to blow him away. Going into the office, he simply asked where it would be better for him to put the boxes, and the lady helped him. She wanted to somehow say thank you to him, but she had nothing like that. It seems that Khan had already found his own reward. She just hoped that he would like the gift, but the boy said that the professor had already done a lot for him. When suddenly she hands him a jar and says, "Thank you for your help." What an inspiration. The boy says thank you and that he will gladly accept her gift. It was very strange, but the professor accepts his gratitude. In this case, he is about to leave and the lady wishes him good luck in his studies. Just look at this sly fox look that definitely did something. Hocus pocus, the main character also turns out to be a damn thief who stole a lady's ring from her office. It turns out that our boy is a connoisseur of high culture, and he likes older girls much more. The problem is that his choice of girls greatly affected his stories, which is why his latest story was heavily criticized. Since everything was like this, the guy decided to change his essence of the story and tell stories about girls older than before. Initially, his story was about martial arts, but if readers like an older girl so much, then he will be happy to write a new story for them. He's even going to add a concept with a guy who finds himself in a strange situation where he meets older women. While the boy was thinking about the plot of his new story, suddenly the door to the elevator was held open by someone's shoes. It was a lady named Namgung Yora. She is a girl who is preparing to enter university. The main character asked for forgiveness because he was lost in thought and didn't notice how she was walking. But it's okay because she was in a hurry. He was worried that her leg might hurt now, but even then, everything was completely fine. The boy was glad to hear this, but in fact, all this time, he was only thinking about the fact that his neighbor was a real beauty. With such a rhythm of life, the boy even began to think because he had not seen his neighbors for too long. Remembering that he had a gift from the teacher in his pocket, he decided to give it to her. This turns out to be a typical Korean energy drink because the girl was preparing for exams and needed to recharge herself with energy. She is going to go to the same university as him, and the exams are incredibly difficult, so she needs to study hard. And the lady became so happy after Appa started taking care of her. The boy just looked at her and thought that his neighbor was a real beauty. If she were a little older, they could start dating. The elevator doors opened on the floor, and we see a girl named Jin Charon. She is a housewife, and the main character definitely likes her. The girl didn't understand why her mother came here, but she herself asked her to bring a notebook for her. While the mother was scolding her daughter for leaving her notebooks at home, our boy gives her the status of the most beautiful older girl. Suddenly, they both begin to look at the boy strangely, and he even gets scared that they can read his thoughts. They all smiled so sweetly as if nothing had happened, but at the same time, the main character understood perfectly well that the balloon would soon explode. Next, the actions moved to the restroom. Kan has already told that he is a writer, but it seems that he did not talk about the fact that this is a very difficult profession. Even if nothing is working out for him at the moment, he has already started a new series of stories in the hope that it will become popular. But still he gave up. The plot was too simple to attract the reader. Although this was completely expected, because it would be strange if he suddenly just started writing great stories. Taking his phone, he begins to think that the problem was in the reviews that readers leave. He tried to look at other short stories and understand the reason why they liked it so much.
His past works began to receive the attention and recognition of readers because they said that they had never seen anything like this before, which is why the boy was not going to stop his favorite pastime.
His new work called Colorful Warriors is a story about a guy who finds himself in a difficult situation in the world of martial arts. An abnormal guy who simply adored female attention finds himself in that world through a portal. As it turns out, the main character did not just describe that character, but made him in his own image and likeness. He was sure that if he did this, it would be much easier for him to describe the story. But this did not make the situation any easier. He even came up with the idea to describe the characters based on real people. Perhaps if a much older and more beautiful girl appeared in the story, the plot would move faster. When suddenly some nonsense starts to happen, the entire bathroom is simply enveloped in blue light. Of course, the boy is in a panic and doesn't know what's happening and is trying to get out of here as quickly as possible. But a portal to another world opens right in front of him, just like in his story. And while the boy is trying to understand what is happening, the portal has already begun to pull him in. He didn't even have a chance to grab his brand new iPhone, so it tragically flies to the side. Everything we see on the last thing in this world is the name of the story of the boy on the broken screen, Colorful Warriors. Next, we are shown some warrior who decided to pay attention to the strange movement on the ceiling. Some kind of nonsense appeared right in his house, but fortunately, like a real ninja, he jumps away from it. The damage that was done to the house was significant, but now it was much more important to understand who this guy was. It was some kind of strange moving technique, and he thought that the main character was far from an unusual person. He had already made many assumptions about the fact that he was sent here by the Emperor or the Namgong clan. The whole situation was even worse because that damn meteorite landed on a girl. When suddenly she looked at him in surprise and said the name Kang Yu. And he called her by a nickname better than a tall woman. How awkward it turned out. Afterwards, he simply jumps away from her and says that he was simply misunderstood, but he himself does not understand anything. Why did he end up in this place with the most beautiful tall girl? Her daughter was also here with her. Having compared them with each other, he realized that there could be no mistake, it was definitely her, but what the hell was going on here? Suddenly, she just runs up to him and says that he needs to leave urgently. She will buy him some time and the main character should run away. The boy was trying to understand what was happening here, when suddenly the girl received a strong blow that threw her to the side. The force, of course, was simply colossal, and the walls in this house were now also damaged. Of course, our boy stood simply in horror at the sight of such incredible power, and the cool dude who was nearby all this time turns out to be very pretentious. Still, there is something masculine in him and he cannot just watch how the best older girl is simply beaten up, so he goes on the attack, but his blow actually hurts him, and the guy with the pigtail simply shook off the dust he left behind. It was just terrible pain because his skin felt like it was made of stone. Suddenly he just takes our boy by the hand and notices that he hit him in the torso. The dude addresses him as if he were a moron, and the main character doesn't care what they call him as long as they don't beat him. Although, wait, this plot seems too familiar to him. He turns out to be some kind of abnormal and asks them to forget about the little things. His name is Yang Yojin, and he invites him to become his student. And the boy is only surprised that he heard the man's name Yang Yongjin. So far, the main character only understood that this was the end of the 3rd chapter of Colorful Warriors that he wrote, after which the actions were transferred to the next day. Namely, at the moment when our main character had already managed to become a student of this abnormal person, he even received a new form. He was already all beaten up, as if they were just practicing blows on him, and suddenly Sensei says it's time to take a break. But even during rest, the boy had to concentrate his energy. Just like in the mana, he says yes to his master. Finally, after hellish training, he can just calmly sit on the grass and relax. This was all simply incredible, because he had already been in his own novel for a week and had already managed to become that guy's student. The writer found himself in his own fictional world, but why the hell is he here because he doesn't look like a warrior at all? But he no longer wanted to fill this world with acquaintance with many ladies, who generally sent him to a fictional world in which only 3 chapters were written. If only our boy had known about this, he would definitely have thought out the plot in advance. His happiness did not last long, so the master ordered him to stop resting and go after him. Like an obedient student, he immediately goes and thinks to himself that he just needs to survive in this world for a while. After all, a master like him would definitely not kill his own student, or so he hoped. It was already noon, and the boy asked if his master was hungry. He didn't care, so the student could do whatever he wanted. Meanwhile, the action moves to a girl named Namgung Yeon, is the eldest daughter of the Namgung clan who was doing the cooking. The main character just came to her and said hello, but it seems that the lady is not at all happy to see him here. Of course, he based everyone on real people. All his characters were people in real life, but who knew that she would be so different in her character? They are in the same boat with her, of course. He didn't want to become his student, so she couldn't put that knife back on the table. Of course, she understood perfectly well that the main character did not do this on purpose, and therefore suddenly asked him for forgiveness. He wasn't even going to blame her for being so angry with him, because she was the one who was kidnapped by Yang Yojin. This is exactly the fate the boy wrote for her in the short story, when his master came and deceived her into marrying her. But the matriarch of that clan went against the will of the master, and therefore he decided to take extreme measures. Namely, he stole the mother and daughter from that clan. Afterwards, the master was going to play golf with the daughter of the clan, and the matriarch tried her best to save her. She even risked her own life when she went against the will of the master, all in order to save her daughter. And it turns out that it was at that very moment that the main character appeared. It was precisely so that those two girls were completely safe, that he became a student of this master. But that lady was completely against this because she grew up in a family where such concepts were alien, which is why she constantly treated the main character of the story so badly. Now she understands perfectly well that the warrior sacrificed a lot for her, and she treated him so badly. Now the girl called herself a hypocrite. But he, like a true man, simply took the beautiful lady by the hand and said that everything was fine. Lady Namgung should not worry about it. At this moment, he swears that he will definitely stop this damned master, and he will become a master who will die at the hands of his own student. Right now, he simply had no other choice, but one day he would definitely be able to defeat him, and he asked what was wrong with the girl. Why was she crying? She just asked if the boy had always been like this, but he was in the world of martial arts and he simply had no other choice. In this case, he is going to go to the matriarch, and the lady asked him to say hello to her mother. A ray of light illuminated his face as if he were a saint, after which he said that he would definitely convey her words. Like a true shinobi, he jumps into the air and flies away. Of course, she was simply shocked when she saw that he had become so strong in such a short time. Jumping through the trees, he realized that he was practically caught and had to leave quickly. In fact, all this time, mother and daughter confused him with a very similar person. The character in his novel had exactly the same name as him, although this is a completely expected situation. To be honest, he is constantly frightened by the fact that unknown facts from his history appear, and he has to try not to get caught that he is not real. But now he didn't care about that at all. Trying to come up with a new story every time was too difficult. Trying to explain everything only complicated everything, and so he just came to the matriarch to bring her lunch. As soon as the boy entered the room, the lady simply ran up and began accusing him. Jun Gaeon. She is the matriarch of the clan and was worried about the main character, whether he was injured, and also about her daughter, whom she had not seen for too long. He simply could not refuse the hugs of the best girl and told her that there was no need to worry, because both girls from this clan were completely fine. And the main character was actually his student, so he's definitely not in danger. After saying that he had become his student, the girl's face immediately changed as if she was disappointed. For everything that happened, the boy was now simply in terrible conditions. Now she could not even calmly look into his mother's eyes. It seemed to him that this was just a great opportunity to learn from such a cool master, but he himself thought that he needed to quickly change the topic, because soon he would no longer be able to just deceive. A package behind him that he was supposed to deliver, an excellent reason to change the subject. He happily does this and says that he just brought her lunch for her. It was lunch that her daughter gave her for one, and said hello to her. He is about to leave and the girl says that it's time, because he has already stayed here too long. But still, she didn't want to just let that guy go, and so she suggested that he share this lunch with her. And he understands perfectly well that the most beautiful girl is really in a difficult situation. How can a guy like him refuse her? He simply could not believe that he was in the company of such a beautiful girl, and just looking at her, he no longer wanted to eat. But just a week ago, the main character couldn't even just talk to her. It was just some kind of magic. While he sat down at the ancient table, the main character made a statement that this was simply the best world he had ever imagined. Next, we are shown a master who was next to the house all this time, and stood pathetically on a tree. It seems that he was too angry at what his student did, and he no longer has any other choice. When he left her property, the boy said that he would bring her more food later, and she asked him to be careful on the way back. But just as the main character flew away from here, she asked him for forgiveness. The only interesting thing is the reason why she apologized. It turns out that the lady is not so ordinary and has magic, but something just happened, and that is why she can no longer fight as before. Every time she tried to reawaken those forces, it was as if she was being shocked, and every cell was shocked. It was simply terrible, and therefore the girl had to urgently find a way to regain her strength. When suddenly the master appears and begins to tell the lady that this is all pointless. Of course, she was simply surprised at the sight of this old idiot, but she was also scared. She was scared for good reason, because the master immediately uses some kind of dark magic on her that repels her. This magic was like snakes had enveloped her entire body, and now she could no longer move. But he was very worried about the fact that the lady might come up with some cunning plan to screw him up. But his plan turns out to be simply grandiose, and so that the lady doesn't come up with anything else, he decides that it would be a great idea to just play golf with her. The guy thought that she was just a damn eyesore who constantly interferes with him with her plans. She doesn't even worry about her daughter, but now he'll show her how to behave correctly. Snake magic turns out to be incredibly strong, and now I'm just trying to imagine what the main character will be like who is going to fight him. But still, he is not such a terrible person to simply mock a girl, so dark magic was cancelled. It turns out that he did it for a reason. It was all because of his student who worries too much about everything being okay with the ladies. Be that as it may, he is still not going to so easily leave the fact that she is trying to go against him. If they want everything to continue to remain as it is, then it is better for her not to use her abilities and no longer make evil plans against him. Still, he warns her to take care of herself and always be ready to play golf with one of them, because this can happen at any moment. He didn't understand at all why the main character was going to eat food with a girl like her, but he would still get the truth. Of course, now the girl was worried that he was going to do something, and asked what he meant by his words. But it was already too late to say anything because he disappeared along with the petals, and now all she could do was sit and cry because he was definitely going to do something to Kang Yu. The words of that guy still mattered, because the boy now she wouldn't be able to see him for a few days. Since everything was like this, he decided to come here first to see him so that the master would not find out anything. Walking into the room, he simply said that he had already arrived, but the matriarch seemed not to be there. But no, the lady was just putting on makeup and acting very quietly, which is why it seemed like she wasn't there. She was so surprised that the boy still came here because he had been gone for too long, and in her thoughts she thought that she would still take the first step. She was just about to take this very step when suddenly the boy with the speed of a flash said that he would return soon, but she asked him to wait. It's impossible to stop the boy, and so all she can do is just watch his trail. It was all too strange because the main character suddenly stopped paying attention to her and constantly avoided her. Yet she asked the reason why he didn't even look in her direction. Suddenly, he simply put his hands on her shoulders and told the matriarch that everything was fine, but she did not understand the reason why the main character was acting too strange. But she understood perfectly well that in order to activate her secret abilities, she needed to play golf with someone, and Khan was just a great person who could help her. But it turns out that he simply did not want to become for her the same enemy that his master was, which is why he constantly tried to keep a distance between them. He tried to convince her that in fact he just needed to stay away from her, and the girl even accepted what he said as the truth. Let her just do what he says until the boy is strong enough to fight him back, but in the meantime she can eat her dinner that he brought. The girl simply said goodbye to him as if nothing had happened, but only in her thoughts she perfectly understood that the main character had missed one very important fact. Namely the fact that his master was far from being as simple as he thought all this time, and in the next frame we once again see how he uses his dark magic on this lady. Just look at this face with a distinct smile on it. Judging by the fact that the girl once again disobeyed his order and is simply going to go to the next world, he can happily organize a trip for her. It seems that he was absolutely not going to tolerate the fact that she was constantly trying to screw him up in her plans, but he would show her nothing about what it was like to deceive him. In such cases, he decides to demonstrate all his strength to her in order to clearly show that he is no longer going to joke. While there, the lady was having a lot of fun. Our main character walked through the forest and watched as the full moon had just appeared. Suddenly, he just remembers his teacher and calls him an old bastard. In his head, he simply pointed at those girls and said that he constantly took care of them, and they began to plot against him. How is this even possible? Let them leave him alone. It turns out that the boy was coming here all this time to take back the box of food. He opened the window and asked her to come. Suddenly, he noticed something strange because today she was not there. He just starts looking for her all over the house, while trying to understand what the hell is going on here. He tries to remember what he wrote in his short story in order to know what awaits him ahead. Some strange shots fly past him, and it seems that the lady has finally appeared in front of him. Somehow they even manage to kiss, and now the boy has a lot more questions than answers. The girl simply begins to ask him to quickly do something about her problem, because she simply cannot do it anymore without her powers. Still, he finally understands that she has secret sealed powers, and for them to appear again, the girl needs to play golf as soon as possible. He simply tried to make the girl calm down and try to explain what the master was actually doing here. That everything was very bad for her, but she couldn't even utter a word. She only asked that he not ask unnecessary questions and just play golf with her. But he turns out to be not against a cool game of golf and immediately grabs a club in his hand and goes to the field. He turns out to be just an excellent golfer, which surprised the girl herself because the main character didn't even leave her a chance to win. The situation is getting worse every minute because golf is gradually developing into a real battle between him and the matriarch. At one point, she even asked him to stop fighting to give her a little rest, but it seems that he is simply not going to give such an opportunity during the battle. But it turns out that no, only in this way could she truly awaken her true powers, so let him not worry about hurting her. She only asked that she play golf with him for as long as possible, because only in this way could her real abilities be awakened. Suddenly, a full realization of what is really happening here comes to him, and he understands that he cannot linger here any longer. But for some reason the game still continues, and the girl simply could not play against such a monster. He turned ordinary golf into mixed martial arts. In the next chapter, their incredible battle continues again, and now he began to play even more seriously. But he still didn't understand how he managed to end up in this situation. It seems that such a game of golf greatly affects her physical condition, and soon she simply will not be able to continue playing normally. Surprisingly, the situation was calm all this time, and despite all this, the master did not even come to visit them. Still, she lost consciousness as a result of this game, and now he simply left the poor girl to rest, after all. He could have very big problems if suddenly the master finds out that they were playing golf. All this was too strange for him because some strange effect remained, as if someone had been watching them all this time. And she turns out to be not sleeping, but asking the boy to come to her once again to play golf. It already seems to her that it doesn't matter at all that the master may come, because so far her master was the main character, so let her return to the field as soon as possible. Of course, the feeling while playing golf was simply incredible, especially considering that now the boy was not playing at full strength. Although, okay, he played somehow too cruelly, from which she still had to constantly try much harder than she really needed. And while all this was happening in his head, he was turning over thoughts about the fact that he was not even going to write these chapters in his short story Colorful Warriors. But he didn't intend to stop either, although initially he didn't want to turn his short story into a typical story in which the main character simply plays golf with the girls. But one such moment will definitely not affect the plot in any way. He felt as helpless as possible because there was only one thing left that he could do. He was not able to defeat the master, which is why he would help this lady become stronger, and then they would definitely have a chance. All he can do is show the art of the snake that his master showed, only for him it worked completely differently. It seems that the girl's abilities gradually began to appear. Suddenly she says that he should return to his original business, because soon the master may have questions. Still, she understood perfectly well that this was the end of their suffering. But he was worried and even apologized because he needed to be more careful. Suddenly she asked him to wait for a while because if everything really was like this, then he can no longer be here. And the girl does not understand what kind of nonsense he is trying to tell. Suddenly, a real declaration of love occurs between them, to which they are both shocked, especially the girl, because it was he who confessed to her. She just asked him to stop laughing at her because now she feels completely fine, so let the main character just leave. But he just looked at her resolutely and said that this was not a joke. He was really in love with this girl, and after they played golf, he finally realized it. She simply refused to believe what this idiot was saying and said that it was completely impossible. If suddenly her daughter found out that they were actually playing golf, then the situation would be simply terrible. Suddenly he just asked her to focus on the damn game of golf, and while they are playing there, our video is coming to an end. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel and like so that the new part will come out as soon as possible.